So you guys put together that first Weezer album, and it's a huge success. That's the time that I encounter you. And do you remember that now as like a really happy time? Some people have a hard time digesting that kind of success. It was a huge deal.
Yeah. I don't know if that was particular to our generation, but it seemed like a whole lot of bands tried their best to make it. And when they finally made it, they became very miserable and felt like this was the last thing they wanted. And I don't know if that still happens to young artists, but it seemed like it happened to a lot of ours.
Did it happen to you guys?
Yeah. After a year on tour, I was like, screw this. And I went back to college.
That's right. It's what the thing that you hated about it was touring, repetition, being on a bus, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was utterly mind-numbing and boring, and just singing the same songs over and over, and there's tons of travel, packing, unpacking, and none of it was interesting. And I just craved some kind of intellectual stimulation, so I went back to school. You and I were at the same college, different times, but you went to you applied to Harvard when you're already a rock star. Is that correct? Yeah, we were on tour, and
with a monster hit album.
Yeah,
and you decide, and this is what a lot of rock stars do. They have a monster hit, and they say, you know what? I think it's time to apply to an Ivy League school.
Yeah, we were playing Boston, so I just went up to the campus and got an application and filled it out, and I couldn't believe it, but they accepted me.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people right now going, wait, what? I went in, it's like you applied for a job at CVS. So you get accepted, and suddenly you're at Harvard. Don't people know that, oh shit, that guy over there who's in my Ec 10 class and who I just saw getting veal parmesan at the Adams House dining room, he's a rock star. Did they know?
Not until the last day of school, because most of our fans at that time were like 10 years old, literally. We connected to a very young group of kids, and it wasn't really like a college audience.
Right.
Also, it's kind of hard to remember, but at that time there was no sense of like me as the front man or like famous or anything. It was more, people knew the name Weezer and they knew a couple songs, but that was about it. And I grew a very long beard and long hair, and I was undergoing this procedure on my leg, so I was walking with a cane. I just looked like some really weird, super old, weird guy. That why is he in this class? I don't. I'd be riding the bus with other students that were wearing Weezer shirts that didn't even, they had no idea it was me.
I just love that.
Wow.
You'd be on a bus at Harvard as a student, and people are wearing Weezer shirts, and they don't know that you have any connection to that band.
Yeah, so on the last day of school, after the full year, in my music class, I remember having a conversation with some other kids, and one of them said, so what are you doing for the summer? I was like, we're going on tour with No Doubt, and I was like, oh, cool, are you working on a tour or something? And no, I'm in Weezer, and that, minds were blown at that moment.
That's right. And they're like, so you're a roadie for Weezer? And you're like, no. You're the accountant? No.